Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
We'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs. Welcome in. It's the Arrowhead Addict podcast. It's Thursday. That means it's the OG hour. Patrick Allen here with you, along with the blog father, Adam Best. Adam, you got a new background, man. Where are you at? What's going on here?
I'm still in Alabama. I'm just in the process of moving. So we're going to be kind of minimalist here until I figure out my setup there. Hoping to have a more permanent background that's a little bit more podcast friendly here in the next couple months.
Yeah. Well, at least you're going to be out there enjoying the nice weather out in LA. I know it's not quite as cold in Alabama, although we've had a cold snap pretty much everywhere. It seems like recently it is freezing in Chicago. I'm talking single digits, negative wind chills. My dog doesn't even want to go outside.
Yeah. And I'm so accustomed to living in warm weather at this point that if it's 20 and snowy outside, I am absolutely miserable. I am much happier in 100-degree heat than I am in 20-degree weather. And I know that sounds crazy to some people, but I think it's just what you adjust to. And I'm really into sunshine and being able to be outdoors and go on walks. And it kind of makes it hard this time of year. I mean, I was just out with my dog thinking, God, how do people in Minnesota even walk their dogs? You know, for 3 or 4 months out of the year. How do they do it? And I guess the answer is, like, right now, I don't even think that much about what I'm wearing when I go outside. And I guess if you live in North Dakota or Minnesota, you really have to think about what you're wearing and bundle that. You know, you have to look like the kid from A Christmas Story when you go outside.
Yeah, it's rough. And the answer is, when you live in a place like that, you don't take your dog for a walk. You just sort of let them. Hopefully you have a house and you've got a backyard and you can just let them out. Shout out to everybody watching live on YouTube. Do us a solid, hit that like button. Of course, make sure you're subscribed. I see Weston Brewster in the chat. Do you see this, Adam? Rumor is that the Chiefs might take a look at the availability of DK Metcalf. I've just done a quick Twitter search on this. I'm not sure that I found the original source or if it's a reputable source. It's getting passed around by a lot of those rando Twitter accounts, big NFL Twitter accounts that sensationalize and go for. There's one guy here, Jeremy Karp, says he's the founder of 170 Sports Media. He's a producer or something. I don't know. He's tweeted it. I'm not sure that that's the source. But that's an interesting rumor floating about. It's rumor season. I've long been a DK Metcalf fan, and I've long thought the Chiefs should go after DK Metcalf. I don't know how viable this is. I think he just signed a new deal, didn't he, with the Seahawks recently?
Yeah, and there's been trade rumors swirling around him for years. I think he's, especially among Chiefs Kingdom, there's been some wishful thinking around him and McCole Hardman. Maybe that plays into it. I have no doubt that the rumor is circulating. It's just how valid is it? However, if you think about the way he interfaces with the current Chiefs receivers, it would be really nice. You have Xavier Worthy, who's kind of a natural flanker. You have Rashee Rice, who's kind of the prototypical new era power slot. And then you have your X and DK Metcalf, kind of your stretch X, who would be like, I don't know, MVS on intense human growth hormone, right? So yeah, fun to think about. But I just don't think the Chiefs are in the business of paying receivers. We kind of saw that with Tyreek Hill. and the contracts they've given out. And I probably really don't think they're in the business of trading for and paying receivers when, look, the way they've been drafting receivers, it got off to a slow start with Sky and McCole, but they've hit 2 years in a row in a pretty big way. I don't see why they would go out and do that when they can just keep drafting these guys. Don't you kind of see it the same way?
Yeah, it's tough. Look, we're going to talk about, and that's what this episode today is about, by the way. We're going to be talking about ways the Chiefs can sort of reload, because when you've got Patrick Mahomes, there's no such thing as a rebuild. It's just, how can we constantly reload? And so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about receivers. I would say that the Chiefs still need an alpha receiver, and I don't think that Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy are going to be that guy for them. I could be wrong. It's still really early in both of their careers. They're both very productive, and the Chiefs have shown that they can win 2 Super Bowls without an alpha wide receiver. So, but the decline of Travis Kelce and his career being up in the air, I do think when you've got a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you've got to stop putting all the onus on Patrick Mahomes to drag guys like Justin Watson and Juju Smith-Schuster's corpse to Super Bowl victories. And you need to keep Patrick Mahomes happy as well. So the Chiefs, everything's on the table as far as I'm concerned. I'm glad they have Xavier Worthy. I'm glad that they have Rashee Rice, and I'm excited about the future of those 2 guys in this offense. But if this year has shown us anything, going into the season, I felt really great. I'm like, okay, we got Rashee Rice. We've got this young rookie in Xavier Worthy who's going to have time to marinate and develop. We went in and brought in Hollywood Brown. We've got Travis Kelce. I thought everything was great. And then it all went to shit. So we ended up trying to trade for DeAndre Hopkins and all these things. And we just didn't have the firepower that we needed, even with Xavier Worthy developing, even with Hollywood Brown getting back. So, yeah, man, I mean, for me, it's got to all be on the table. You've just got, that's Brett Veach's job to decide what is and isn't worth trading for. But we're going to talk about some other things that I think might be a bigger need here in just a minute. But let's dive into it. So again, it's Arrowhead Addict Podcast. Patrick Allen, Adam Best here with you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. This is going to be a fun episode. We're going to break down some moves that the Chiefs can make to reload. Not really going to be any Super Bowl talk in this one. I'll just set the table. Look, it is what it is. The Chiefs are still a really talented roster. They got all the way to the Super Bowl. People that are out there, if you see these comments calling the Chiefs frauds, that they were never really any good, that's bullshit. That was always, no matter what happened, unless they won the Super Bowl, if the Chiefs lost to the Eagles by 1 point in triple overtime in that Super Bowl, people would be saying the same thing, right? Because they're sick of the Chiefs. So they're in a mode where it's schadenfreude. They want to see the Chiefs fail. They got what they wanted in spectacular fashion. Just ignore all that crap. It doesn't mean anything.
They said it like 15 games in a row. I mean, if you keep saying it, eventually you're going to be right? They would have rolled over into the 4-peat if the Chiefs 3-peated. So,
yeah, I've been banging that drum for a while. Like all season long, I was kind of trying to warn everybody. I'm like, look, what everybody's saying about the Chiefs is all BS. And if you just keep saying it long enough, you're eventually going to be right? If you just keep saying the Chiefs are going to lose, eventually the Chiefs are going to lose. They're not going to win the Super Bowl every year. It's really friggin' hard. The last thing I'll say on the Super Bowl is how damn remarkable it was. Like, we're so spoiled to a degree that we sat here and watched Patrick Mahomes drag this team 2 years ago to beat the Eagles the first time with just an atrocious wide receiving core. And then he does it again. And they go up. These were good teams. That Eagles team, the first team, was really good. That San Francisco 49ers team that they beat last year was really good. They had Christian McCaffrey, all this stuff. Like, this is not luck. And it wasn't luck that they were back in the Super Bowl this year. And they just ran into a bit of a buzzsaw, and they played their worst possible game. And if that happens, and it's like, we see this all the time in the NFL, right, Adam? Like, every year, it's week after week, you see teams that are way more talented lose to teams they shouldn't. And that's what makes what they've done, going to this many Super Bowls and winning as many as they had, so hard. Like, do you think the Lions weren't good this year? The Lions were incredible. If they play that Washington team 10 times, they probably beat them 9 times. That was the one day where the injuries piled up on them. They didn't play their best ball. Washington's on the upswing, and they caught them. Sometimes it's a strategy game as much as it is a physical game, and sometimes you get caught. Like, to try to tear down the Chiefs and act like because they got their asses kicked in the Super Bowl, it somehow like tarnishes the dynasty. I got to be honest with you, man. Like, people that say that, they're full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about. People who are like, because they got blown out as opposed to losing by a point, trust me, in 15 years, when Patrick Mahomes hangs up his cleats, nobody's going to be like, well, you know, he got blown out in a couple Super Bowls. Like, all that matters is, did you win or did you lose? I don't care if the Chiefs lost that game by 1 point, I'd feel just as miserable about it as I do the way that it went, because they didn't win the Super Bowl. And they're in the same boat as everybody else this season. The Bills, the Bengals, and the Raiders don't matter. They got a nice Lamar Hunt trophy. That's great. They didn't win the Super Bowl. It's success or failure for the Chiefs at this point.
Man, I'm trying to write out these takes, but it is tough out there. It is tough out there.
Rough.
You have takes like it would be better to be Joe Montana losing 49-3 earlier in the playoffs, or Tom Brady getting blown out by the Ravens early in the playoffs, or even Tom Brady losing to Jake Plummer or Mark Sanchez earlier in the playoffs than losing in the Super Bowl. Somehow losing in the Super Bowl is like worse than not even making the playoffs to these people. It's baffling. And the Jalen Hurts talk is super out of control. If you look at Jalen Hurts' situation and you look at Patrick Mahomes' situation, now I don't want to besmirch the Chiefs team. They've got a lot of talented players, but just nowhere near as many as the Eagles. And if you look at the things that are most important to supporting a quarterback, Patrick Mahomes has had a revolving door at tackle. He's had a revolving door at receiver. It's ridiculous. No other quarterback in the league, probably in league history, could, maybe Brady, but could survive under these circumstances. And probably not even Brady, because he doesn't have the escapability that Patrick Mahomes does when it comes to pressures. And he has no running game to speak of. I know we're going to talk about that later. You look at Jalen Hurts, he's got probably the best duo of receivers in the league, especially when you throw in Dallas Goedert. I think A.J. Brown is a top 3 receiver in the league. A lot of people just don't realize it because he's been on these run-first teams. And then he has the best set of tackles in the league and the best running back in the league. And you look at, it's like Patrick Mahomes is not only playing Madden on all Madden mode, he's blindfolded, and Jalen Hurts is playing on rookie mode. It's just like they're not even playing the same sport almost.
Yeah, look, you go when you have a dynasty like the Chiefs have and you win as much as they have. We saw this with Brady. The team goes through eras. And look, credit the Eagles. They've done an unbelievable job building that roster. If they had Patrick Mahomes or somebody of his caliber, they would be on a dynasty run because they've got so much talent. And that's not a knock on Jalen Hurts. He won the damn Super Bowl, man. He played well enough to win the Super Bowl. He played great in the first Super Bowl. Like, he's in the situation he's in. I'm not going to not. And see, this is what pisses me off about what people try to tear down the Chiefs. They're always trying to minimize the Chiefs' success. I'm not trying to, like, this conversation about the Eagles roster, we're not trying to minimize the success of Jalen Hurts or the Eagles. They earned it. They have it's just like the Warriors when they built that incredible roster and then they traded for KD and everybody got all butthurt about it. Oh, well, they built that roster and had cap space to go and get somebody like KD. Like, that, it is what it is. Like, good for them. And you know, more of the loss for the rest of the NBA. You know, I'm sure OKC was sitting there being like, oh man, we should have traded away James Harden. Oh, well, you did. You fucked it up. You know, so it is what it is. The Eagles have built a great roster and they're a contender now. The Chiefs have done it a different way and they have a really good team, but they've not had the best roster in any of their Super Bowls. Any of them. You can make the argument maybe they had a better roster than the Bucks in that Super Bowl, like top to bottom roster. But that's about it. Like, they did not have a better roster than the 49ers either time. They didn't have a better roster than the Eagles either time they played them. So, you know, it's really remarkable what the Chiefs have done. And, like, if you hate the Chiefs, fine. Sit back, enjoy the fact that they lost, laugh about it, like all that stuff. But where it borders into pathetic territory for me is when people try to say things like they're not really that good. They didn't, but man, you don't win 15 fucking games in the NFL if you're not good. Like you don't luck your way into losing 2 games in a year or whatever the Chiefs lost. Like that I'm sorry, man. Like you might get a couple lucky bounces here and there, but and like the ref stuff, like forget all that. So, but let's get into how we can go ahead.
Yeah. It just, what irks me is that they've been exposed, that this is the end of the dynasty, that the GOAT conversation is over. I don't even know if we're at intermission of Patrick Mahomes' career, given the longevity we've seen from similar quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, who is probably the most accurate comp for Patrick Mahomes. He's a better version of Aaron Rodgers. He's going to play until he's 40, guys. He's going to play until he's 40, barring disaster. So to say that the Chiefs dynasty is like over, and I get that they're going to have to find stars after Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, which, by the way, has already begun. Trent McDuffie exists. Creed Humphrey exists. So I think that's what we're talking about today is phase Mahomes 3.0, basically. And I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah. We had the late show era with Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins, and that was awesome. And we got 1 Super Bowl out of that. We had whatever you want to call this era, the small ball era, the Alex Smith era, whatever it is, the
Dink and
defensive
dunk
era.
right?
Yeah. And look, the Chiefs were ahead of everybody. Like that's the thing. They saw the way that defenses were going. They changed their offense. And then what did Mahomes do? He won a friggin' MVP in this style of offense. And it's slowly gotten less effective because that's what happens. They played out the string on the light show, then they adjusted. They've played out the string on the dink and dunk, if you want to call it that, and it brought him 2 out of 3 Super Bowls. So great. Okay. Like I'm excited to see what the new era is going to be, because as long as you have Reed and as long as you have Spags and Mahomes, they're going to be able to keep reloading. So let's get into it. Again, it's the Arrowhead Addict podcast. We love you guys. If you want to become a member of the Arrowhead Addict community, now is a great time because the people watching now are the hardcore Chiefs fans, and we know you're going to be with us all year. We're not going anywhere. So hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube, and check out the link in the description if you want to join the member community and support the show. All right. So first thing the Chiefs have to do is clear cap space. Now we got the news, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that cap space is going to be a little bit higher salary cap than everybody thought it was going to be. That helps the Chiefs a little bit. But there is a narrative going around that the Chiefs are in cap hell, and they do have a lot of money tied up in a handful of contracts. But the salary cap, you often hear like the salary cap is not real. The teams structure these deals now to get them done, but they also do so with flexibility in mind. So often what you'll see is a guy signs a new deal, and it's like the first year of the deal is like really kind of team friendly that first year. And then the second year, there's like a big number, right? And then what they do is they structure them for a number of years so that when they get to that second year or whatever, they could maybe restructure that deal or add a void year. They could convert money to signing bonuses where they can spread the cap hit out across. So there's all kinds of ways to manipulate the cap, and the Chiefs can do that. So an example, right? Mahomes has a $66 million cap number this year. He can restructure that because he has a 10-year deal. So they can spread money across by converting money to signing bonuses. Once they do that, the money's guaranteed. Then Clark Hunt has to put that money in escrow, or it gets paid, depending on how the money is going to be paid out and when. The Chiefs could, just with Mahomes, they're probably not going to be this aggressive with it, but they could save up to $39 million alone on Patrick Mahomes' contract this year. Mm-hmm. So it's like, all right, there's some flexibility there, right?
Definitely. And I think that was one of the advantages of signing him to such a long-term deal. Granted, if he's not Patrick Mahomes, you can't really do that. But the funny thing about all these people that say the Chiefs are in cap hell, they have zero understanding of the salary cap, because the Chiefs, in terms of things like void years, the Chiefs have not even really explored that. They are 28th in the league in void years. The Eagles are first. They have like $400 million in void years. Yeah. The 49ers are second. They have like 200 million. The Chiefs have like 2 million. Like a little bit under $2 million. That is a lever they haven't even had to pull. They've been very conservative. So when it comes to figuring out the salary cap this year, they have all kinds of potential outs. It kind of depends on what Clark Hunt wants to do. I think that's the most under-discussed thing about the Eagles is Jeffrey Lurie. I believe he wants to win more than any other owner in the NFL. And he empowers Howie Roseman in a way. Honestly, Brett Veach is not empowered. So that's when people say that Howie Roseman's definitely better than Brett Veach or whatever, you have to consider that. But I think the Chiefs do have the long view. They think that they've got another decade plus of Mahomes. So they've been kind of cautious here, but they have a lot of outs.
Can you explain to folks that may not have a great understanding, what's a void year? What does that mean?
It basically is just moving money from now to park in the next 5 years as dead money then, as opposed to now. The salary cap, it's not like the NBA, right? It's where money is guaranteed. A lot of this money going to these guys isn't guaranteed. The contracts can be moved around and manipulated and restructured. And I like to think of the salary cap as more like a 5-year apparatus. And it's kind of like a credit card with low interest, given it might not have been like this before, but now given the influx of gambling deals and these tech deals like Google and Amazon and Netflix, the cap is just ballooning every year. It exceeded projections by 5 or 10 million this week when the numbers came in. So I just think you're able to do this stuff more. And what I'd say to our listeners is I've dug into this stuff pretty heavily. It's still confusing to me. It is very, very confusing there. I mean, this is why sites like Over the Cap exist, which is a great resource. I would suggest following them. And we've had experts come on the show in the past to kind of explain to us and other people in our community how exactly these things work, because there's just so many bells and whistles. And the Chiefs aren't in bad shape by any means. You compare them to the Bengals, who are such a cash poor team. They don't even know if they're going to be able to keep T. Higgins, and they desperately need to keep T. Higgins. So,
yeah, it's essentially right. Like you convert money to a signing bonus, and then you add on void years to the end of the contract so that it spreads that cap hit out against years that they're not going to be on the team. They're not going to be playing those years. So signing bonuses are always able to be spread out over the course of a contract. And so there's I think a max, like you said, of 5 years where they can spread that money out. And so you could sign somebody to like a 3-year contract. So there's a website called summersports.com that talks about the Kirk Cousins deal. And they talked about his deal. And so this was published. Actually, I don't have a date on it, but basically his 2023 base salary was 10 million with a prorated bonus of 10.5 million. And then so his cap number was 20.25 million. And then he had a void year in 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027. And that spread out his prorated bonus money, 10.5 million, 10.25, 10.25, 4 million, then 4 million. And those last few years, there's no cap number, but it gets spread into the bonus. So you can check that out. It's called summersports.com. If you just do like void years explained. It's for 2023. So it could kind of explain how that works for you. But whenever you do that, and that brings us kind of to the Clark Hunt part of the conversation, whenever you put money into a signing, when anything is guaranteed, the money has to go into escrow. It doesn't necessarily mean that the player is going to get all the money up front, but the signing bonuses tend to are guaranteed, whereas like the base salary number isn't. So if you have you're going into the year and you got a $5 million signing bonus and a $5 million base salary, remember you get paid the signing bonus on a trigger date, and the base salary gets paid out as you play games. You often hear about NFL players talk about game checks. So if you get cut, you don't get the rest of that base salary money because you didn't play in those games, but that bonus money is guaranteed. But because it's guaranteed, the NFL, the owner, has to put the money into escrow because it's guaranteed. So you don't want to run into a situation where, you know, some boneheaded owner who doesn't have the money signs somebody to some huge deal, and then the player gets screwed because, you know, they make a bad investment or something. Or like, oh, I don't have the money for that bonus that was supposed to be guaranteed for you. So you know how rich guys are, right? They want to put their money to work for them. So they don't like having a money sitting in, hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in an escrow account, not making them richer. And so I don't know Clark Hunt. I don't know his exact philosophy. Every wealthy NFL owner or ownership group is different. They operate differently. But I do know that the Hunt family is worth billions of dollars. And so they have the money to do pretty much whatever they want in regard to void years, escrow. It's what is their appetite for it?
They're like the 10th or 12th richest family in the country. And you're right. It often comes down to liquidity. But when you're in that situation, you can become liquid enough to pull this off if you're thinking ahead, if the desire's there. Now, what I would say is the Chiefs don't need to do what the Saints have done in the past.
Right.
They don't need to do what the Eagles are doing now. But I think there is a happy medium here, kind of what the Bills are doing. The Bills have like 50 million in void years. They're like middle of the pack, 15th or something. The Detroit Lions and Baltimore Ravens are right around 10th. They have like 60 or 70 million. I just think that's a tool they could use more. My fear with Clark Hunt, and hey, we all have to be grateful to the Hunt family. That's the first thing that needs to be said here. But he's a businessman. He doesn't want to spend more than he has to. That's how the Hunt family got to where they are. My concern is that they see Patrick Mahomes as a way to compete for a Super Bowl every single season without spending as much money as you normally would have to do to achieve that. That is my grave concern with Clark Hunt, because it's kind of something they can get away with. And I just want to see them maximize this window. Mahomes is a cash cow. He's been creating, all these playoff games. Even this far into his career, he's still one of the top 3 selling jerseys in the NFL. I think the thing you want to do too, we'll bring up Joe Thuney here in a second. The reason they keep going back to these guys like Kelsey and Thuney to restructure is you feel better about kicking money for these guys down the road if you feel like they're going to be around and it's going to be worth it. And that's why we jokingly call it the bank of Joe Thuney. He's arguably your most reliable player. He did get hurt once for the Super Bowl, but he basically never misses games. He's always consistent. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. And let's get into some of the other restructures. So Chris Jones, he's got a $34.9 million cap hit. They could save up to $20 million, moving some of his money around. And you put Joe Thuney in here. Can you kind of explain what he offers up for the team this year?
Yeah. Joe Thuney is 32 years old. He's in the last year of his contract, which is a $27 million cap hit. You cut him, you only save $10 million. Why would you cut him? I know in the Super Bowl, we're thinking, well, he didn't look that good at left tackle. Well, he's not a left tackle. And at left guard, we have seen zero slippage. The way he stays healthy and consistent, I think he can play till he's 34, 35 at this level pretty easily. I would feel comfortable extending him 2 more years, adding 2 years to this contract, 2026, 2027, extending him, maybe saving something like $12 million, $11 million, nothing to sneeze at. I just think if you're going to look at a guy to extend, you could extend Jawan Taylor. That would save you a lot of money. But the way Jawan Taylor has played if Jawan Taylor was making $12 million, even $15 million a year, he'd be fine. But when he's making up into the 20 millions, he's just not a good enough player to warrant that kind of money. And they can get out of his deal next year. So I prefer not to borrow against him. I prefer to extend Thuney to restructure Jones, to do some of those things. And we'll talk about Kelsey. There are some potential options there, but there's money to be created here is the big takeaway.
Yeah, and Jawan Taylor, look, they won a couple Super Bowls with the guy. You know, it hasn't worked out to the contract, but kind of like Frank Clark, it worked out well enough. And I think this is one of those situations where, had it worked out, man, they could have been like, man, he's still pretty young. Like, let's give him a nice long contract. He's gonna be our right tackle for a long time. But to your point, he hasn't played great. They probably could stand to upgrade there. The penalties have been a huge problem. And so they can get out of that deal next year and save quite a bit of money by cutting him. So they know enough about him at this point. He's played in the league long enough. He probably is what he is. He's unlikely to take some sort of major leap to where the Chiefs, but they could evaluate him. Maybe he does, this year, and then they could think about it next offseason. But yeah, I think this is the right move. Jones, Tooney. Another thing they can do here is extend Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. Both are coming up for their 5th-year options. Remember, they're first-round picks. So what's going to happen is they're going to pick up their 5th-year options, and then that means that they get like a guaranteed raise, basically, for that last year. It's still cheaper, because usually when you're picking up a guy's 5th-year option, it means he's been a very successful first-round pick for you, and he's due to get paid. So he gets a nice raise for that 5th year, but you're saving money over what you're going to have to pay him over the long term. So it's like a mini franchise tag in a way, enables you to kick that big contract down the road for a year. So these guys, now, I don't think Karlaftis is going to get an insane contract. McDuffie, that's a different story, but they're both going to be cheaper on their 5th-year option. So the Chiefs could look at extending those guys now and extend that cap hit out by adding those years right away. So especially McDuffie, like I would just lock in McDuffie now. He's going to be, as you pointed out, kind of the heart and soul of this defense moving forward. And then, Clark needs to spend more cash so the Chiefs can create space. Brett Veach has gone on the record as saying our free agency is going to be our draft. That doesn't mean that they're not going to create cap space and do a little bit in free agency. But I think what he's saying is don't expect us to make like a bunch of crazy moves. And that's where the DK Metcalf thing, if they were going to trade for him, I pulled up his contract. So the out for the Seahawks is right now 3-year, $58.2 million with about $21 million in dead cap. He's 28 this year, and his base salary is $18 million. He's got a signing bonus 7.5. So his total cap hit's going to be 31.8. So you could see where maybe if they're in a little bit of a transitional period, they don't think that they can go all the way. They could want to move on from him. And then he has 3 void years on the back end of his contract. So I don't see it happening. Mm-hmm. I think the Chiefs probably feel good enough about their wide receivers that the good news about the Chiefs wide receivers right now is that they're cheap. Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, they're on rookie contracts. Nobody else really costs anything. And then you've got Travis Kelce, who's essentially a receiver for them, who, if he were to retire, I think it saves them like $17 million this year. They could also cut him and save $17 million. We're going to talk about that in a second. If Kelce were to retire, DK Metcalf, I think, would be potentially on the table then. That changes things for the Chiefs. And if maybe they do have an inclination that that's the way it's going, maybe that's where this rumor is coming from. But otherwise, they're not expected to be big players in free agency. Do you agree with that strategy?
I do agree with that. I said yesterday, it's kind of like the rug in The Big Lebowski. It's to tie the room together. It's not the entire room, right? I think the most successful teams aren't usually the big spenders in free agency. They're the ones. Now once in a while, you need to bring in a honey badger or something like that to put you over the top. But a lot of the best deals, I think the best 2 deals in free agency the Chiefs have made in the past several years were for the 2022 season, Juju Smith-Schuster, that $3 million deal. I know it grew, but that was an incredible deal. He gave them almost 1,000 yards. And then the following year, Donovan Smith for $3 million. I think he got some bonuses and whatnot, but they got league average, consistent left tackle play with no catastrophic games for dirt cheap. I mean, you could easily pay $15-16 million for the level of play he gave you at left tackle. So those are the kind of deals you want to find. You want to find a guy that, I think what they saw in like Justin Reed was, man, this guy's not been in a very good situation down there. Or what they saw in Jawan Taylor, they maybe thought, well, he's going to have better coaches here. You just want to think of a guy that has some untapped upside. And then the other thing they're looking at is kind of defective products, maybe the box is dinged up or something like that. But when they have those discount stickers on them, like Hollywood Brown, last year we were kind of arguing, do they want Darnell Mooney or do they want Hollywood Brown? Well, they went with the version that was $10 million cheaper, but sometimes you see why they're cheaper. You see why DJ Humphries was still around well into the season. So sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. I think it's the right move. You've got to draft well if you're the Chiefs, and that's how you keep a good team cheap around Mahomes.
On Metcalf, I think the thinking there might be Seattle's gone as far as they can go with Geno Smith, right? It's just, he's been a good stopgap quarterback. He's kept them semi-competitive, but he's not going to take them to where they ultimately want to go, that new coaching staff. So they might be thinking, we're not close. We don't have the ammunition to trade for a quarterback, and that's what we really need to take this franchise to the next level. Maybe trading DK Metcalf, especially now that we have a young receiver that's kind of his heir, could give us the ammunition to get a real quarterback.
Yeah. It makes sense given his age, right? Trey Smith. So news is that this came from Nate Taylor, by the way, The Athletic, that the Chiefs do not plan to tag or transition tag Trey Smith. So I'm going to ask you just straight up, should the Chiefs bring Trey Smith back?
No, it pains me to say that because Trey Smith is one of the most fun offensive linemen to watch that I've ever seen. He throws guys out of the club. He's an absolute mauler in the run game. He's a really good dude, good personality. I think he and Creed Humphrey should have their own buddy cop movie. You know what I mean? Like I really love those two guys together. But when it comes to his pass blocking, I just think he's kind of like a B-. He allows a lot of pressures. I just don't always love his technique. I was expecting in the Super Bowl, you and I both like Deadwood. I was expecting that battle between him and Jalen Carter to be like Dan Doherty and Captain Turner. And it really wasn't. I think it was a pretty one-sided affair there. And it ultimately comes down to the Chiefs are paying Joe Thuney big money. The Chiefs are paying Creed Humphrey big money. They're paying Jawan Taylor big money. I don't know. I think the left tackle thing has been the thing that plagues them the most. You think back to that Christmas game against the Raiders that they lost, that horrific, the last time Mahomes really played horrifically and the Chiefs just didn't show up. What happened that game? Wanya Morris was unplayable. That's what happened. So I think if they're looking and jumping ahead here, if they're looking at a left tackle like Cam Robinson, and this is going to be weird to say, I do not think Cam Robinson is as good of an all-around player as Trey Smith. He's not a very good run blocker, but he is a better pass protector. And I think having a good pass protector, a better pass protector at left tackle is a better investment for the Chiefs and the way they run their offense and who they're trying to protect and how much they pass than a right guard who is one of the best run blockers in the league. I just don't think Trey Smith is able to be utilized enough in Kansas City. And also with the salary cap going up, I just think this is going to get out of control. I think he's a sexy free agent because he plays for the Chiefs. So I think they just can't afford to give a guard $25 million. Are you with me on that?
No, not even a
No?
little bit. I
Okay.
understand. I mean, I understand the thinking, but I think he's a sensational player. And I think the reason he's going to be the one of the most highly coveted free agents hitting the market is because he's really good. And, this is a guy who he played 655 pass blocking snaps and didn't allow a sack last season. He's been durable, even though he came in with injury, the blood clot concerns. He's played 67 to 68 games. He's like best friends with Creed Humphrey. Offensive line, as we have seen, is the most important thing. And I don't think the Chiefs and Trey Smith everybody had a bad game in the Super Bowl, but I don't think Trey Smith's pass blocking is a problem for the Chiefs. I think the way I want to rebuild this team, I want them to get a stud running back somewhere, and I want them to lean into the run game more in this next phase. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I want Trey Smith on the roster for that. I think everybody thought it was a big mistake when the Chiefs gave that big contract to Joe Thuney. Looking back on it now, didn't seem like such a crazy mistake. But it worked because, as you pointed out earlier, they were able to find cheap left tackles, and they won a couple Super Bowls doing it. So for me, restructure people. The big problem right now is the Chiefs' offensive line. It ain't getting any better letting Trey Smith walk. And now you've just got Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney, and now you have 3 holes on the offensive line that you have to fill. Keep that middle of the line together because Joe Thuney's going away relatively soon in Mahomes' career speaking, right? A couple more years he's going to be around, and then he's either going to leave or he's not going to be as effective anymore. Keep Trey Smith just like you kept Creed Humphrey and draft a left tackle. Do whatever you have to do to get as high as you need to get in the draft to get a left tackle. Because if you do that and you hit on the left tackle, that's an extremely expensive position. So now you can afford to pay Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney, Trey Smith. You're out of Jawan Taylor's contract in a year, and then you can get a more affordable right tackle replacement. But without this left tackle, they've got to get this solved. That moves us on to our next point, which is find a left tackle. If the Chiefs can trade up, they have to have, it takes 2 to tango. Do you buy into my philosophy of trade first round picks? I don't give a shit. Go get Patrick Mahomes a stud left tackle to protect his blind side for the next 5 years on a cheap deal.
If I'm trading picks, I want a sure thing. I just don't really like this tackle draft class that much. And maybe after the combine and digging in deeper, I'll like it more. But even looking back at recent history, there's no guarantee. There were some good tackles last year who didn't start or didn't perform well. There's no guarantee that guy will be ready. I kind of want us to get a vet, to spend on a vet at left tackle. And my solution would be to go with someone like Brandon Scherf at guard from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's 33 years old, but he hasn't missed a game the last 3 years. I think he's nowhere near the run blocker that Trey Smith is, but I think he's arguably a better pass blocker, and you can get him for like 40% of the cost. And who did Jawan Taylor have his best year playing alongside? Right guard Brandon Scherf. So I would do something like that and then go out and get a Cam Robinson or an Alaric Jackson, or I'm not against trading up if they identify a guy that they think can come in and be the answer right away. And I also haven't given up on Kingsley Suamataia, but a guy like Kingsley who is raw but has immense room to grow into himself, sometimes guys like that don't hit until like year 3, year 4. Yep. So
Chris Jones wasn't really good early on.
No, and if you look around at like the Bills, Spencer Brown is a good example of this. Jordan Mailata, I mean, he's kind of a one-on-one, but a lot of these guys that are kind of raw and have upside don't hit right away. So I think either at right guard or left tackle, Kingsley Suamataia could be the answer. I just wouldn't make the bet on him being the answer at either position in 2025. I would find other solutions, and I'm in agreement with you that they need to figure this out. And I just think you're right that it did work. It did work, kind of this revolving door. It worked until it didn't, because Donovan Smith worked out. But last year, the plan, the backup plan, the backup plan, and the backup plan all failed because there was no sure thing at left tackle. And I would be okay with a sure thing, even if he was just like a B blocker, a B pass protector, like Cam Robinson is. But he's going to do his job. Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to perform with a guy over there. I just feel like which position is more likely to sink Patrick Mahomes and this passing game? It's probably left tackle.
Yeah, it is for sure. Shout out to Saflip for the super chat. It says, "Hey fellas, hypothetically, would you be willing to trade McDuffie, Rashee Rice for Brock Bowers? I believe he will be the next big thing as tight ends go." I would not. So I don't think the Raiders would do it for either of those players. Bowers for McDuffie would be like worth considering depending on your needs. But if you're the Raiders, like you've got so much, like what's the point? That's, you know what I mean? Like that's like trading, I don't know, a nice pair of rims for, like some really great new upholstery in your car, but you're driving like a clunker. Like it doesn't matter. Like what's the point? Why bother? I would love to have Brock Bowers. Would I trade Rashee Rice for Brock Bowers? In a heartbeat. Brock Bowers has a Hall of Fame upside. He's incredible. Rashee Rice is a good player, and the Chiefs hit on him. But yeah, I mean, I would do that deal. The Raiders wouldn't in a million years. McDuffie is a little bit closer, but again, Brock Bowers is a guy that he could play for, an eternity at that level at tight end. Trent McDuffie is a cornerback. As good as he's been, there's a high degree of variance in that position. They don't tend to last as long. Once they lose a little bit of athleticism, that's it. So it's just not happening. But like, would I do it? Yeah. Would you trade McDuffie if the Raiders were dumb enough? And the Raiders are dumb, although they're gotten smarter by hiring Pete Carroll. I think that's actually a decent move. Would you trade McDuffie for Brock Bowers right now, straight up?
I would. And it's not an easy decision, but I look at two things with McDuffie. First off is cornerback is a roller coaster, as you mentioned. It's also a weak link system, the secondary. So as we've seen, McDuffie can be incredible, but the guy on the other side of the field, if he's not, they're just going to throw away from McDuffie. The only knock on McDuffie too, the reason why I think I would probably take Surtain and some of these guys over him is he's small. That's the only, I mean, he's got literally everything. I think he's the best tackling corner in the league. He gives you everything else. But when it comes to shelf life, Brock Bowers broke the tight end record last year. I think yards and receptions with no quarterback to speak of on a poorly coached team with no talent around him. And he plays a position where I think he's got a 10-year career ahead of him where he's just going to go off and have 1,000 years. I mean, 1,000 yards. If there's one guy that's going to have a Travis Kelce-like career that's currently in the league, that's the successor to Gronk and Travis Kelce, it is very much Brock Bowers. But there's no way. I mean, I just think philosophically the Raiders aren't going to trade with the Chiefs no matter what. Some of these teams in divisions will trade with each other. The teams in the AFC East used to, and the Vikings and Lions recently did a deal on draft day. But I think where the Chiefs are, I'm not sure if any team in the AFC right now wants to trade with the Chiefs, given how the Buffalo Xavier Worthy deal kind of worked out. So that's why.
Yeah, and that's what makes my strategy for trading up for a left tackle. If the Chiefs are going to do that, if their strategy is we're going to pay Trey Smith because we're going to trade it for a left tackle, they damn well better know that they have a trade partner, that they're going to be able to move up, and that their guy is going to be there. Because if they don't, and then that falls through, now you're in a pickle. You're back in the same position that you were last year. So it's a risky strategy. But they've got, I mean, whatever they got to do, they got to figure that out, and hopefully figure it out, ideally cheap and long-term. All right, let's talk about Travis Kelce. We've been dancing around this the whole show. He could be cut for $17 million. There's a preposterous article on NFL.com that was talking about cut candidates, and they mentioned Travis Kelce, and they indicated that they should cut him. Not that they would. They were like, they're not going to, but they maybe should, because his skills have declined. I think that is bonkers. I think if Travis Kelce has done so much for this organization, you don't cut him, period. Full stop. Okay. Ever. And then if he wants to come back and play, well, then maybe you figure out something with him. You can add void years, do something like that to spread that cap hit out. And I think if Travis comes back, one, I'm not sure he's toast. I know everybody thinks he is. But if you go and look at a lot of players that at the end of their career, you'll see like a little bit of a decline. And then every once in a while, though, they have like one more great year. I don't know how it happens. It might be that they start to decline a little bit, and then they change something with their diet or their workout routine, or you know what I mean? Or they adjust, like they realize I can't do what I used to do. So they start playing a new way that's more effective for them. And so rather than, trying to outrun guys because you're not as fast anymore, you get better. They get better about finding holes in the zone or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if he came back and had one more 1,000-yard season. I really wouldn't. But I think if they bring him back, they just need to figure out where he fits in with this offense. And they need to understand that maybe he's not the first option anymore. And if they and build it around that way, set him up for success, right? Like if you had all of a sudden DK Metcalf, a move like that could enable Travis Kelce to get back to a 1,000-yard season. Because right now, this season, who did you have to worry about on this Chiefs offense? I mean, DeAndre Hopkins wasn't scaring anybody anymore when he got there. Hollywood Brown wasn't there. People weren't afraid of Xavier Worthy because he was a rookie. So it was Travis Kelce was the guy that they needed to stop. And now that he's older, they were able to do that. Next year, Rashee Rice is back. Xavier Worthy's in his second year. Maybe bring in somebody else. I don't think it's crazy that he stops getting the bulk of the attention and then starts, punking people in one-on-one again and has one more big year. What do you think? Should he come back? Will he come back?
It's really up to him. I think there's a good case to come back and a good case to leave. His entertainment star, you're going to have a hard time getting brighter than it is now. So if he left and he wanted to jumpstart his second career right now, I would not begrudge him at all. We don't think about this. He's had a lot of surgeries, a lot of injuries. He's a tough guy. He plays through almost everything, but his body has a lot of wear and tear. He's played an extra season in playoff games, essentially.
Yeah.
Maybe even more than that now. But I think he probably has a bad taste in his mouth, and that was not the way you want to go out. His brother went out kind of the right way, went out on a shield. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but they had a couple good years, and I don't know, man. I'm in agreement with you, though, that he was being treated as the option 1A that opposing defenses had to stop, and they were taking him away, and they were more able to take him away than ever. But if you surround him with more talent and other teams adapt, they see, well, he's not what he once was. We have to stop these other guys, and he's more of a complementary piece. Yeah, perhaps you can do a year, maybe two in that role. I just don't really want to see a heavily degraded Travis Kelce kind of like limping around out there, because he just played the position with so much passion, so much panache, that he's just a once in a lifetime kind of player, one of a kind kind of player, that I just want to remember him at his heights. But who are we to say how Travis Kelce gets to go out? I think even the franchise feels that way. The city feels like that. He's given so much to everybody. If there's one player that Clark Hunt should like kind of break his void year rule to like give Travis Kelce the what is it called? The going away tour that he deserves, the farewell tour that he deserves. It's Travis Kelce.
Yeah. And I think he can still be a really productive player for them. He's just not going to be the guy that he was. He could probably play 3 or 4 more years, maybe 5 more years, slowly declining, but being a contributor. But what he can't be is a hindrance to the team from a salary cap perspective, right? So void years or a new contract, if he wanted to play for 3 more years, like I think for a couple of years, he could still be the best tight end on the Chiefs and one of the better tight ends in the leagues. He still caught a ton of balls this year, but it depends on the money and what's happening around him. Can they support him as, okay, tight end isn't like the huge focal point for us anymore. It's wide receivers, it's the running back. And then while everybody's paying attention to all those things, he's coming and he's giving you 6, 7, 800 yards a season and 5, 6 touchdowns, something like that. He's talented enough that he could do that. He's wily enough. He has the connection with Mahomes. If it were me, I would come back. I could not let that be. I wouldn't even quit this podcast after that Super Bowl. Like, I just, you know what I mean? Like, I would not want that to be my last memory of playing in the NFL. I'd like to say, this is my last year. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go all in. And I think it could be really exciting if he does, because if he does decide to come back, I think he's going into this offseason with like a singular focus. And don't be surprised if he comes back, if he's in as good a shape as you've seen him in years. He really focuses. I'm not saying he hasn't been in previous years, but it gives you a little something extra when it's the last ride, and you want to make sure that you milk everything you can out of that. But whatever Travis wants, he's given so much to this organization, to us as a fan base. That's what I want for him.
Think about his situation. It's kind of like Patrick Mahomes adapting to being a father of 3. Like that is going to take something from you. Travis Kelce has been, I don't think Taylor Swift is a distraction. I don't think Travis Kelce has not been giving it his all, but he has been adapting to a really unique and weird situation. He's dating the most famous woman on earth. He's become this huge podcast and entertainment star, and he's arguably the most famous player in the league. And I think that all takes some getting used to. He's doing more travel, and I think he probably knows how to navigate that, certainly better than he did 2 years ago, but even better than he did last year. And at this point, Travis Kelce, you hear about guys like LeBron and Derrick Henry just pumping millions into their recovery, into recovery science, and keeping their body a well-oiled machine. Travis Kelce can spend as much as he wants, given his financial situation, on his body, on making sure he stays at a peak performance level.
Yeah. And I agree with you about Taylor Swift. Like, you guys, you think Travis Kelce wasn't going out and having a good time before he started dating Taylor Swift? You think 20-year-old Travis Kelce wasn't going out and having a good time and traveling and doing things? It just wasn't getting as much attention because he wasn't dating Taylor Swift. So we'll see, man. I'd love to have him back for a farewell tour. I think that'd be fantastic. And hopefully the Chiefs can make the money work. Okay. Running back and wide receiver. Last topic to hit here. So the Chiefs receivers under contract heading into this year. Rashee Rice, we all know he's probably going to miss part of the season, maybe the beginning of the season, maybe 4 or 5, possibly up to 6 games with a suspension. We'll see how that all plays out. But he'll be back for the stretch run. Xavier Worthy, year 2, very promising finish to his first year. Nico Remigio, who I think should make the roster as a special teams player and returner. I thought he did a really nice job for them. Then you got Tyquan Thornton, who the Brett Veach special picked up off the scrap heap, former second-round pick of the Patriots, Justin Ross, and Sky Moore. So basically after Nico Remigio, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, great. Nico Remigio, probably not going to be a big contributor in the passing game, although you never know. Maybe he finds a little world for himself. And that's it, man. And you're probably not going to have Rashee Rice for a while. So, like, what do you do at the wide receiver position? Do you just keep trying to find guys in the draft?
I think you do. I've always loved the Pittsburgh Steelers strategy of perpetually reloading through the draft in those first 3 rounds. Some years you pick a guy in the first, some guys you some years you pick a guy in the second, some years you pick a guy in the third. We've seen with hit rates in the second and third round for this particular position, wide receiver, they're almost as good. You know, you're almost as likely, especially once you get outside the top 10, when you get away from those Jamar Chase types or those Malik Neighbor types who you know are going to hit. It's really a crapshoot from about 20 to about, I don't know, even like 80 or something. So I think they can keep doing this. And the reason you keep doing this is a couple years from now, and Rashee Rice is up. Is Rashee Rice really a guy you want to give 20-something million a year to?
Probably not right now.
Not right now. I mean, if he stays healthy and grows up and becomes what we all hope he can, maybe. But if they didn't keep Tyreek Hill, I don't know. I mean, they did re-sign him once, but this might just be the path. And I do think they could use one more guy. Both these guys are incredible, Worthy and Rice, but I agree with you. They're not the kind of guy that can go out there and run every route and just beat man coverage. You know, they're not Nico Collins or somebody like that. I mean, you don't have to go out and find AJ Brown or Justin Jefferson, but they could use another guy. I'm trying to think. Sky Moore, honestly, I would cut Sky Moore. You could save 1.6 million. Like, he needs a fresh start. He's not giving the Chiefs anything. Nothing. Zero receptions last year, clogging up a roster spot and costing it. If there's a guy that just plays special teams that has zero catches, like, there are 200 guys floating around that you could find to do that. You don't need to pay Sky Moore 1.6 million and make him it's probably not very comfortable for him living in Kansas City right now. You know what I mean? And the rest of them are fine. But when it comes to Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, and McCole Hardman, I think it's time to walk and commit to more quasi-permanent solutions there. Are you kind of feeling the same way?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, Juju he's toast. It's over.
Good blocker, though.
Yeah, look, Watson, they're going to be able to find, those are role player guys for this team. So they'll be able to find those guys. They're always going to be available. Try to keep developing Nico Remigio a little bit and see what you can get out of him. You've got him in the return game, so you don't need Sky Moore for that. I would move on from Sky Moore. It's over. Justin Ross is never going to do anything. If he was, he'd have done it by now. And he makes questionable decisions as well. So, you know, I know you need depth there. So maybe somebody hangs around for a little bit because they know the system, but they're not going to make an impact. So the Chiefs need to turn their attention to that. So keep trying to pluck guys out of the draft. And what about the running back position here? Kareem Hunt at the end of the year was the best running back on the roster. I think Isaiah Pacheco was still recovering from his injury, but look, man, he was a 7th round pick. They have no equity in him, right? They can, continue to play that string out. But you saw what I think you saw this year, and it's been great that the Chiefs have been able to win so many Super Bowls with like guys that like without like a stud like a Jonathan Taylor or a Saquon Barkley. But you saw what that did for the Eagles. You saw the extra dimension that Derrick Henry, even at his advanced age, because he's a freak, gave the Baltimore Ravens. Give Mahomes, try to find a difference maker at the running back position for Patrick Mahomes. The only time we ever saw it was a few games with Kareem Hunt when he was at the peak of his powers in Kansas City. And it was awesome. It was awesome. It really opened things up for them. They've just basically had no running game, replacement level running game for years now. I really hope they can find somebody in this draft. This is a deep running back draft. There's a lot of guys out there. Judkins from Ohio State looks like he could be really interesting. So Is there anybody you like coming out?
Yeah, I mean, I like Ashton Jitty a whole lot. I like
Yeah, oh
Cam's.
yeah, sure.
I like Cam Scadaboo. I like out of ASU. I like him a lot. I like the guys with good receiving profiles. So Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. I like him. I am totally with you. I think that we talk almost exclusively about the line when it comes to the Chiefs' offense breaking down and pass protection. But if you go back and watch that Super Bowl and you watch a lot of the season, Vic Fangio and other defensive coordinators had zero respect for Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine, Isaiah Pacheco. None. I mean, they're worrying exclusively about Patrick Mahomes and choking the targets in the back seven. So that makes life really hard on Patrick Mahomes. And I think the league has changed, has gone to a direction where running back matters more than it has probably in 6, 7, 8 years because of this defensive trend of the too high shell, taking away explosive plays. So if you look at the other contenders, they all have better deep passing attacks than the Chiefs. And part of that is the running game. I mean, Detroit, you have to respect Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. The Ravens have Derrick Henry, the Eagles, Barkley, the Rams have Kyron Williams. The list goes on and on. I know I'm not thinking, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I think part of the reason
and all those teams, they don't, other than the Ravens, they don't have like great quarterbacks, right? Like great quarterbacks, but they're winning. They have a downfield passing game like Jared Goff, all due respect, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts. Like questions about Jalen Hurts this year in the passing game, wins the Super Bowl, hits some deep balls in the Super Bowl against the Spags defense. You know what I mean? Like it, and even Lamar is incredible. He's obviously the best of the bunch. Even his passing is not as good as the top passers in the league. So, yeah, man.
But it could really
I think
last year he had his best passing performance he's ever had. And I don't think that's a coincidence that he was playing with Derrick Henry. And you look at the emergence of James Cook and Ray Davis in Buffalo, and that's helped unlock the deep ball. I mean, the Buffalo Bills have not capitulated on the deep ball the way the Chiefs have. It's a choice by the Chiefs, and I think part of it is the running game. And the reasons they've gotten away from this, and they've gotten not away from it, but gotten away with it. You look at Damian Williams, weird as it sounds, him being a journeyman back during that stretch in 2019 and into the 2020 postseason, he was giving them explosive plays. He was generating explosive plays. That is something they do not have now. Jerick McKinnon, during the height of his postseason performances, he was giving them, now he's not a very good runner, but he was giving them like near Christian McCaffrey level receiving efficiency. So they were able to cobble that together. But like the kind of like revolving door left tackle, it fell apart this year. Kareem Hunt was somebody nobody else wanted. Isaiah Pacheco wasn't himself. Samaje Perine was somebody, the Denver Broncos, who played like 4 running backs this year, they didn't even want him. So the draft is interesting. Free agency has some options. You got Najee Harris, Aaron Jones. You have Nick Chubb, who wasn't himself last year, but maybe he bounces back. You have Javonte Williams. I think even some trades could be a possibility. Local kid who grew up in Kansas City, Rachaad White, because of Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker in Tampa. He's one of the best pass protectors in the league, got great hands. He's an okay runner. A guy like that would fit in great in Kansas City. And hey, maybe because this is a deep draft class, you throw the Bucs a future 6 and they say, okay, we don't have room to pay Rachaad White $3 million. You go ahead and take him, Kansas City.
I'll tell you what, I really like Cam Scadaboo too. Evaluations of him are all over the board coming out. But if you look at his advanced metrics and like his tackle breaking and that he can catch the ball, he seems like he should be a slam dunk. I don't understand where the hate is coming from, but I'm sure we all watched him in that game against Texas. Like that dude could play, man. And he could be available at a palatable place for the Chiefs. The great thing about running back is if you can find the right one, you don't necessarily like left tackle. stud wide receivers like a Jamar Chase or Jamar Jefferson. Like, you got to get those. You might catch lightning in a bottle. You got to get them early, top 10. It's easier to identify some of those positions. Running backs, they come from all over, man. Bucky Irving, was he 7th rounder, 6th? He was maybe not quite that late. Bucky Irving wasn't a first round pick though. Now I got to look it up.
Man, he was incredible last year. He graded out PFF both as a rusher and a runner at like 90. He was incredible last year. So I'm in agreement there. Cam Scatabo, I don't know if, I mean, honestly, maybe him being white is part of it. I don't know. I mean, he's not the fastest guy in the world either. So I think his combine is going to tell you something. But I think the thing with running backs is he's not small. So he doesn't have to be the biggest burner in the world, and he's got good hands. So I look at him and I kind of see a little bit of Zach Charbonnet or Maurice Jones-Drew, a guy like that. Those are like
good.
Those are really good players. I mean, Zach Charbonnet is probably the best backup running back in the NFL right now. So I like that a lot. And the Chiefs have an extra 3rd rounder this year. So I think picking a running back in the 2nd or 3rd round, if they decide to do that, wouldn't sting as much as it might in other years.
Yeah, and look, man, you need to have depth at that position. And, I would even bring back Kareem Hunt on a cheap contract if he's interested, as like my 3rd running back if I was going to draft somebody. But by the way, Bucky Irving was a 4th round pick. I think he went like 125. So you could find really talented guys. I'd love it if the Chiefs got Scatabo. Please give me a player that we could call the Scat Man. Like that's pretty much like 80% of the reason why I want him on the team.
Carson Steele, but actually good, right?
Yes. Oh, and you mentioned his speed, and I just think that like teams have got to start to figure out that 40-yard dash time is bullshit. Especially when it comes to running backs. Like how many times are these guys long running? You know what I mean? Where they get up to full speed. How often does that happen? What's their burst? What's their tackle breaking ability? Their vision? It's not like they're going out there running 40 yards every time they touch the ball, 20 yards. Like they go out there and it's like, can you get through the hole? Can you do you have short area quickness? Do you have good field vision? Can you go out there and just rack up 7, 8, 9 yards every time you go out? You're not out there running. You're not a wide receiver. You're not a quarterback.
I hear what you're saying, but I hear you say this, and I'm like, wouldn't it be nice to see a running back rip off a 40 or 50 yard run a couple times a season?
Yeah, but they can't. Do you know who else was? Let me look it up. So a guy that you've mentioned in this conversation.
I know Kyron Williams was slow, and Bucky Irving is kind of slow too. So
yes, David Montgomery ran a 4.63 40-yard dash. You watch that guy with the Lions. Does he look slow? Does he look like a bad running back to you? He looks friggin' awesome.
No, like, he does look kind of slow when Jahmyr Gibbs comes in the next play. But Jahmyr Gibbs is kind of like the heir apparent to Jamal Charles or something. So,
but you're telling me you wouldn't take David Montgomery on the Chiefs right now in a heartbeat?
Yeah,
he's an incredible running back.
He'd be great.
You don't need to be. Yes, speed is a good thing, right? But it's not everything, especially in the running back
position. Isaiah Pacheco is a burner. I mean,
that's right. People forget that.
He had a faster 40 time than Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall in that draft class. He had the fastest 40 of any running back in that class. And you know why it doesn't matter with Isaiah Pacheco? Because he runs into contact, because he doesn't have good vision. He can't hit the hole and he doesn't have explosive play potential. So that's one of the problems.
I would rather see somebody slower, like a Cam Scatabo, routinely break off like 30-yard runs that he gets caught from behind because he can see the field better than watching Pop, who I love, by the way, running into the back of Creed Humphrey over and over and over again when there's a giant hole over here, no matter how fast he is. So, and that's what it was with Kareem Hunt, right? At the end of the season, Kareem Hunt doesn't have speed anymore, but he's got incredible vision, strength, and a great jump cut. And he could run up to that line and patiently find a way to poke through and get exactly what he should have gotten. He was rated really, really well. He was only going to give you what was there and nothing more, but he was going to give you what was there. And when the Chiefs were working in Isaiah Pacheco, he wasn't doing that. And that is why they went, in my opinion, they went back to Kareem Hunt despite the lack of potential explosion.
I think the last thing I'll throw out there in terms of the Chiefs running attack, they're seeing light boxes, guys. If you can't succeed as a running back in this situation in Kansas City, the way people play Mahomes and Andy Reid, man, you won't find an easier situation for running backs, especially when I know when they put Mike Caliendo in there, that really hurt the running game because you lost Joe Thuney in there. But it's a good interior line, and it will continue to be regardless of what they do with Trey Smith because of Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we get out of here, we got a little tradition here. If you're here for football talk is over, but we are going to do Patty's Power Rankings. We like to talk film, Adam and I, and so we picked this year, Trent McDuffie's birth year, the year 2000, for our 3 favorite movies from the year. Again, we're not saying these are the best movies of the year. There are 3 favorite movies of the year. The year 2000, what an interesting year, Y2K, all that. Really good films. Why don't you kick us off, Adam, with your number 3?
It was kind of hard to decide. And I looked at your list and I was like, man, I like all those movies too. Number 3 for me is Gladiator. Love the cast. Ridley Scott is kind of hit or miss for me, but this is just an awesome movie. I wasn't even that big of a fan of the sequel, which is weird because you and I have gushed about Denzel Washington and I love Gladiator, but just Gladiator 2 didn't do it for me. But this one did with Russell Crowe, who just an awesome actor in some of my favorite movies, LA Confidential, The Nice Guys. I mean, I've probably seen The Nice Guys like 20 times. The Insider, I could just go on and on about that guy. And then Joaquin Phoenix. A lot of times a movie like this is only as good as their villain. And Joaquin Phoenix is just awesome. And I just thought all the stunt work, because they did so much practically, looked good. This new movie, it was all digital effects, and they have like sharks in the Coliseum, and which sounds cool, but when you see them try to pull it off and the monkeys and everything, it just didn't go over for me. But 25 years later, I am not sick of this movie at all.
Yeah, I thought Gladiator 2 was terrible, to be honest with you. As much as I love Denzel, terrible film. I like Gladiator. I've always had a little bit of a beef against it because I thought it was really good, but I didn't think it was like Best Picture worthy. And I was really annoyed that Russell Crowe, I was happy he won Best Actor, but it felt like a makeup Oscar because in the previous year, I believe it was
The Insider.
Year, or was it The Insider? Right. No, when was he in A Beautiful Mind? He should have won the Oscar for A Beautiful Mind.
He was in a Beautiful Mind, I think, after this. So he could have won for I think it is after. He could have won for The Insider too, which is 99.
2001.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah.
So there are 3 movies where they actually picked the worst. It's not a bad performance, but I think
he should have won it the next year instead of for Gladiator. It was a better performance in A Beautiful Mind. And it was a makeup for The Insider. Right. But that's also, the thing. They do that all the time.
They were doing that with Denzel because Denzel almost won for The Hurricane, and then he wins for Training Day. Was Training Day this year?
Yeah.
No, it was
I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, but listen, I think A Beautiful Mind is an incredible film, and I think his performance in it is unbelievable. And so I got things mixed up, but I was always annoyed that he won for Gladiator, which was like a fine performance, but nothing special, but didn't win it for A Beautiful Mind. Okay. My number 3 is Castaway. I know this movie is a little controversial with some people because some people found it boring. I think it's incredible. As a former actor myself, I just love this performance by Tom Hanks. It's a tour de force. It's incredible. When you can make somebody cry, make me tear up over somebody losing a volleyball. I just think it's an absolutely incredible film, super well done. Not really too many movies quite like it. And he's just unbelievable in it. He's it's Hanks at the peak of his powers.
Bob Zemeckis, man, the guy that gave us Back to the Future and so many other things. He's not afraid to try things out. You know, Forrest Gump and everything. Castaway. God, I can't tell you how many times I've joked about Wilson in my life. The volleyball from that, but I didn't find it boring at all.
So I think. I don't know. I think some people, maybe they thought it was going to be more like there was going to be more of a payoff at the end. And I know the first time I saw it as a younger man, like I was like, oh, like I was so excited for him to go home. But now I was like, as somebody who's a little bit older, the last act of that movie, of him going back and feeling out of place in the world, is really heartbreaking and incredible. It's great storytelling. It's just a fantastic film. All right, you're number 2.
The whole FedEx stuff and Helen Hunt and all that.
I
need to revisit this, because I think you're right. With some more life experience and perspective, it would probably hit differently. Number two, I had a really hard time not putting this higher, because it is one of my favorite movies. And another thing that I've watched like 20 times, Almost Famous. Just I love music. Those of you guys who listen to or watch our Wednesday show, Sterling and I share that. We often talk about what we're listening to. This movie just sings. It's Cameron Crowe kind of using his unique life experience to tell the story of kind of classic rock in the moment, and just a stacked class. Sometimes movies just benefit from getting Frances McDormand in like a couple scenes and Philip Seymour Hoffman in a couple scenes, just like knocking it out of the park on top of an already strong cast. If you haven't seen this one, it's just very easy watch, very fun. If you like music, can't recommend it more highly.
Yeah, Billy Crudup. You get a little Jimmy Fallon in there, and
he's great in that movie. I think actually
he really is. Oh God, what's his face from? Why can't I put it out from
Jason Lee?
Jason Lee, so good. I mean, his line, "Rock and roll will save the world. The chicks are great." I sound like a dick. I mean, there's just so many incredible. The plane crash scene. There's so many iconic scenes.
The plane crash scene is such brilliant screenwriting, because usually you can't put characters in a believable device where they just spill their guts and it doesn't seem like bad writing. But if you think you're going to die in a plane crash, that is the one situation where you just get everything off your chest. But what makes it great is that they don't crash, and they all have to deal with everything that was said, and you have the guy at the end that says, "Oh, I'm gay," that never talks. And
it's amazing. I love Almost Famous. It was really hard for me not to put it on my list. Absolutely banger of a movie. Number 2 for me is American Psycho. As a horror fan, as a fan of brilliant acting, this movie's just such a trip. I just watched it again somewhat recently and just enjoyed it so much. It's completely batshit. It's very funny while also being horrifying. I mean, the stuff with the CDs and it's another tour de force performance in this one. And it has a lot to say about like people in general and the Wall Street types and the way that we compete with each other and materialism. It's just an absolutely tremendous film.
Good cast too. And if we're talking about quotable stuff, I probably still say I'm going to return some videotapes and just, I think the funniest part, you mentioned this, I guess, was it records he's putting on? But like when he's talking about Phil Collins, like Phil Collins really came to the forefront, and he's like listening to Sue Studio and he's about to kill somebody with like an axe. It's just like so surreal and bizarre, that juxtaposition.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic film. All right, what's your number 1?
Number 1, I'm cheating. It's it's East Asian cinema. I couldn't pick one of these films, but I am a huge film of foreign movies, especially from this area. There's 3 of them. I'll run through them very quickly. The first one is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the most famous of these. Taiwanese filmmaker Ang Lee, Michelle Yao is in that. I think it won Best Picture. Maybe won Best Picture. The second one is In the Mood for Love, and that's Wong Kar-wai. That's got like Tony Leung. If I don't know if you guys saw Shang-Chi, but the bad guy in that movie was in this like very well done romance movie. Not going to be everyone's speed, but then this last one, and that was out of Hong Kong. This last one, Battle Royale, out of Japan. Without Battle Royale, we would not have the Hunger Games. We would not have Squid Game. It's kind of the thing that started this like reality contest to the death fad that we have. And it's a biting satire. And I just thought like, what a trio of movies from the same region. So I just picked all 3 of them.
I love it. It is cheating, but it was a big year. So good choices. Yeah, look, number 1 for me here is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I'm a big Coen Brothers guy. Love Lebowski. And this movie is just, if you're a fan of the Odyssey at all, seeing the Odyssey and taking it and setting it with 3 convicts, and the way that it's a story I'm very familiar with, the way that they weave in the Odyssey with these characters, and you've got an absolutely insane cast here. Obviously, you get Clooney, John Turturro, you get John Goodman as the Cyclops. It's such a hilarious film. It's just so well done. Laugh out loud funny. You've got incredible music in this one. T-Bone Burnett, of course, did the music for this one, had a hit song come out of it. It's just absolutely hilarious. One of my favorite all-time lines and sequences. We thought you was a toad. Do not seek the treasure. It's bushwhacked. It's just, it's hilarious. If you've never seen it, it's probably not for everybody. But Christopher Nolan's about to make the Odyssey as well with Matt Damon. So I love one of the older productions of the Odyssey. We used to watch it every year in my Latin class in high school. So it's just, this movie's a blast. It's brilliant across the board.
I was just thinking about that Christopher Nolan's doing the Odyssey. I think it's also with Tom Holland maybe, but that's going to be wild because he's maybe the one filmmaker who can get the full budget that saga deserves. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get any arguments for me for any Coen Brothers movie. I saw that in your list when I came to do mine. I was like, okay, we get it. I don't have to pick the Coens, but we still get to talk about the Coen brothers. And I know everyone talks about like Aaron Sorkin and Tarantino when it comes to dialogue. Those two, to me, working together, best dialogue I've ever heard. And not only like this movie, but True Grit. I mean, the list just, No Country for Old Men. The list just goes on and on.
Their dialogue in The Big Lebowski is Shakespeare. Like, it's you and I have been talking about Deadwood because we've both been doing a rewatch of Deadwood, which is also very Shakespearean in a number of different ways. But the musicality of there's a scene when in Lebowski when they're in the bowling alley, where the 3 of them, John Goodman, and Bridges and Buscemi, are working together here, and Buscemi doesn't know what's going on. He bowls a strike, he comes back in, he's interjecting, and the pacing of it. It's when Walter's trying to say, it's when
I am the walrus.
The dude. Yeah, right. It's when he convinces the dude to go and try to get money from Lebowski. It's really the thing that kicks everything off after the inciting incident. If you watch the pacing of the scene, it's so brilliant. It has perfect buttons. It's brilliant acting. And you're right. Dialogue, those guys, get out of here, man.
it's even the movies of theirs that I don't like as much. Burn After Reading, Intolerable Cruelty, stuff like that is still. I still watch it like any day of the week. It comes on. I'm in a hotel room. I'm watching any Coen Brothers movie. Maybe not The Lady Catcher or whatever that was, but great pick, man.
Well, underrated Coen Brothers, in my opinion, Miller's Crossing.
Oh man. I love what's the rumpus, right? That's the thing that they kept on saying. I'd say my underrated one is Barton Fink. I'm a big Barton Fink guy, but that kind of early 90s Coen Brothers period is really underrated. Pre Fargo.
Yeah, super special. All right, we got to get out of here. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you did for the movie talk, Adam will be back in a couple of weeks, and we'll do another year. So if you got a year you'd like to hear us talk about, definitely shoot us a note and let us know. Good Chiefs talk. Combine starting up. It's time to reload, everybody. I know it's a bummer about the Super Bowl, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see them remake this team a little bit and head into a new era. So Arrowhead Addict will be here with you all along the way. Make sure you check out arrowheadaddict.com for all the stories over there. Matt Connor and the team do a great job. Price Carter's draft board is up and live. So start educating yourself on all of that. And we'll see you next week with our regular slate of shows. But until then, thanks to Adam Best. Thanks to producer Richard. I'm Patrick Allen. We'll see you next week. But as always, go Chiefs.